I feel like my family like it better when you know, if I'm married or engaged or have kids, because I notice my dad loves to call my sister more, because you know she has her kids and the nieces and nephews. So you know it's a lot of, also society kind of looks at you differently. They feel like, okay, you've passed the stage, you've like graduated basically. So now we can all respect you and listen to you and understand you because you're married, or you know you're in a committed relationship. um so it's just it took me a while, and I struggled with it, and I know a lot of people have. I got engaged 3 times. I'm being very open here. And it didn't work out. I, you know, like I I didn't regret any of them. It was, each one of them were lessons in my life, and I've grown after every single one of them. But you kind of start to wonder, like, is being in a relationship all that important? You know, and then you kind of, after all that, you find yourself and you're like, oh my God, you know, I was so busy trying to be in a relationship with the person in front of me, whoever that may be, whether, you know, I got engaged or whatever, that I completely forgot about myself. Which is probably the most important relationship out of all the relationships that I've had. And I forgot what I liked all of a sudden. I forgot how I, you know, how I usually act, what makes me laugh, my favorite movie. I forgot because I was so embedded with every single person that I was with that I liked what they liked. You know, I started, you know, every time they like something, I like it. Wherever they like to go, I like to go. It's just,
I think you're on mute. I think you're on mute, Anud.
Yeah, I think someone, maybe you muted everyone by accident.
Sorry, you were on a roll.
I was on mute the whole time?
No.
So like maybe
the whole time, just a little bit.
Okay, good. Oh my God. But yeah, so that's in a nutshell. So there is like different kinds of relationship. There are toxic relationships. There are relationships where you find yourself almost like a caregiver. You forget yourself and you just take care of their needs. You put their needs first, which is fine. And love, you're supposed to. In a relationship, you're supposed to. But a lot of times, I feel like people are confused about the essence of a relationship, like the true meaning of a relationship. And they keep saying, you know, I want unconditional love, but unconditional love, I feel, only happens between a mother and their children. I don't feel like it happens between couples. I don't know. Am I wrong?
That's amazing, because we all come to relationships with completely different ideas. And whenever we talk about relationships, you know, different images and different, you know, different training come to mind. So I don't know what, you know, here's my question. If you are to dream of the perfect relationship, what would it look like? If we're talking intimate, we're going to talk about other relationships in a little bit, but, you know, if you are to have your ultimate dream relationship, what would it be like? Do we even know what it is? Because a lot of times we go into relationships looking for something we are missing. So if we are missing a little bit of self-confidence, we are, you know, we go into a relationship looking for assurance all the time because we want that self-confidence from somebody else. So, you know, unless we go into a relationship completely complete, and you know, nobody's like perfect, but where most of our needs are met, basically. We don't go into a relationship needy, but the training that we've had growing up, you know, not only culturally, but, you know, universally, we grow up thinking that whatever we are missing, we will find in a relationship. That condition that, you know, I'm going to come to you to make me feel better about myself, so you can they say that, you know, go into a relationship so somebody can complete you. But nobody can complete us, right? We have to go into a relationship complete. And that's, if you want the core of why relationships don't work, it's because we project our lack and our need into the other person, and our expectations become that they fulfilled something that we don't even tell them that they have to fulfill. So we never communicate with people to say, you know, I like, you know, when I'm cuddled or when I'm hugged, this is where I feel loved, or this is what I need to feel loved. Nobody has that conversation going into an intimate relationship, and
Yeah, it's true.
that happen. So I assume that if I'm a hugger and I like to be hugged, I assume that this is showing the other person that I love them. But the other person might not be hugger, right? They love might be something completely different. So there's a lot of assumptions and a lot of us living inside our mentality is how we go into relationships, and this is why a lot of misunderstandings happen.
I feel like you should never go into a relationship broken. A lot of people get into relationship thinking that it would fix them, whether it would complete them, fix them, complement them, or whatever. There's always a lack in the other person. So that's why it took me a while to realize that, okay, even though my engagements didn't work out for good reasons, nothing related directly to me, but I realized that the only way I'm going to get into a proper relationship after all this is that if I work on myself personally. But work on myself doesn't mean that I have things to fix in me. I just have things to understand, appreciate, and love in me so I can give it back. Because I feel like I'm constantly judging other people in front of me because I'm actually judging myself. And I'm trying to fix other people in front of me because I'm trying to fix myself, but I can't see myself because I lost myself, you know, in the process. So it's a vicious cycle, and a lot of people don't know how to get to that point. Like, it took me a lot of slaps, like proper slaps, okay, for me to just wake up. And I don't want anyone to get slapped. It's not fun, you know. I hope no one ever gets slapped, but it does take trauma one after the other for you to wake up, you know, and realize, wait a second, why am I being treated this way? Or wait a second, this is not the love I deserve. Or wait a second, this is not the relationship that I'm actually looking for. This is a relationship my mom wants me to be in, or my dad wants me to be in, or society want me to be in. And before you know it, you're divorced with 2 kids. You know, nobody wants to be in that position. It's 10 times harder to be divorced with kids than you know, everyone goes through experience. It's not a bad thing to be divorced, but it's just not something people aspire to be when they get married.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, no, I completely agree. And I think, you know, society reinforces, and I think the movies and the series and all of these, the dramas give us
the notebook.
Yes, but they give us a sense of relationships that's completely unrealistic, because most of us have the illusion that, you know, we land, that we're gonna find our you know, dream person. We're gonna find the ultimate relationships.
And it's gonna be like this.
Yeah, and he's gonna come on a white horse or a black horse or in a Ferrari or Lamborghini or whatever we fancy. But seriously, we think that we're, you know, we go into the relationships fantasizing, because it is a fantasy, fantasizing that it's gonna happen, we're gonna find it, as if it's out there and we're gonna find it. Relationships don't work this way. Relationships get created, they get built, like everything else in life. I mean, we work for everything to, you know, we work on bettering ourselves, we work on advancing, we work in our jobs, we work towards our goals. But whenever it comes to relationships, we think it's gonna land, you know?
You know why? The thing is, I feel like, I don't know, Salma, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel these days people don't have patience at all. Things happen so quickly, whether you want to order food and, you know, Deliveroo, and it's like at your doorstep in like a few minutes or an hour, 45 minutes, or else they'll give you your money back. So it's like guaranteed. Everything's guaranteed. So when you go into a relationship, you're like, hey, I'm investing in this. So I better get my money's worth or my time's worth. Okay. So like you automatically think that, okay, so, you know, you get into a fight, you need to make up like instantly, like things need to work out, and khalas, you need to forget what happened, and you just move on to the next phase. People don't work that way. People think that they're in a relationship with a robot, and they think that, okay, fine, with the press of the button, okay, I did a mistake, I said sorry, move on. You cannot just expect the person in front of you to just move on. You know, like when something happens between you two, you need to understand each other and work things out. The question that I'm getting a lot from people is that, at what stage do you work on a relationship and you're patient enough to work on it, and at what stage do you walk out?
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful question. That's the $1 million question, because people who are, you know, people keep thinking, you know, am I in the right relationship? Some people might be stuck in a relationship and already planning their exit strategy. Some people might be single and not in a relationship and want to attract the right person. Some people are in a relationship, but they're not sure, you know, do I deserve better? Am I settling? Am I not settling? So a lot of these questions are, it depends where you are and what stage you are. But do you work on your relationship? And when do you work on your relationship? You work on your relationship all the time, because, you know, with intimate relationships, and, you know, relationships come in different forms, because the quality of our lives is the quality of the relationships that we have. So our relationships are friendships, relationships at work, because we're human, you know, it's the human interactions. Everybody touch points of the relationship.
Yeah.
But why is it, you know, it's the touch are all in the intimate relation? Because we have higher expectations. We invest so much more of ourselves and our life into that. So at what time do you work, at what stage do you work for? Listen, relationships don't land, they're created. And they are built by two people working together to make sure that it's a successful relationship. But if it's not going anywhere, that's, you know that you're the only one who knows deep down inside that it's going nowhere. But you owe it to yourself, to your partner, to give it your best shot and to work on it. And there are 7 dimensions and 7 rules, like, to great relationships, and we'll go with them. But, and then you would say, no, but what we tend to do is, and I've done that a lot myself, is a lot of times we know, our intuition tells us something, right? But because we are so committed to that relationship, because we don't want to lose that person, we
Not only
silence.
that, some people also think that they don't exist without that relationship.
Exactly. We define.
And that's when you know you're in the wrong relationship.
Because we actually define ourselves only if we are in a relationship, because we're terrified to be alone. So, and that, we silence what we know is right, and we kind of, assume something else, or like it's somebody who wants to believe a lie when their intuition is like screaming and saying, guys, get out. So look for the red flags, and our intuition always tells us that. But the starting point of why are you in that relation is very important, because if you go in and if I go into a relationship and I have all of these needs, right? From that relationship, it's fine. I want to feel loved. I want to feel understood. I want to feel that I'm home, I belong, it's fine. But if I'm projecting the things that are weaknesses in me, or the things that are voids in me, and
For example,
so if I don't have very high self-worth, if I have low self-esteem, and I'm always looking for assurance to give me that self-esteem, my partner is gonna say, give me assurances all the time. You're good, you're safe. I love you. I won't look at somebody else
and
once.
it becomes like a drug almost.
It's not, right? And the more he gives it to me, the more I want it. And when he doesn't say it, I feel, oh my God, there's something wrong. I'm like on shaky grounds here. So that's not his problem. That's my problem, because I'm insecure. So if I'm looking at him for security, that's a double-edged sword. Why? Because he will hold the button and he will hold power over me, because he can give me that insecurity anytime.
Yeah.
And that's very dangerous, because I can become a victim in this relationship. Plus, he becomes a victim because I'm always going to him for that security, right? So it becomes dreadful. Okay, I'm gonna give you assurance once, twice, 1 month, one year, and then baden,
And then it gets ridiculous. Yeah.
It's ridiculous, because I am not working on my insecurity. I'm just getting him to fill it temporarily, and then I need it to be filled again, day in and day out. So the departure point, or the entry point into a relationship, we should be whole and complete ourselves, and understand the focus should be us, right? If you want a healthy relationship, let's reflect about where are we now and what kind of relationship do we want to be. Because if we go into it, like you said, broken or needy, that doesn't make a healthy relationship at all. That actually just makes sure that you stay needy. You're looking for another person outside yourself to give you that. When we hold the power to everything inside us. So it's really important, because when I look at relationships, and we talk about relationships with couples and with different people, even close friendships, like we have intimate friends and so on, a lot of times we project our needs upon them, and we assume that you're my closest friend, you should understand, you should be there. There's nothing called should, right?
Yeah.
We should go into it confident. We should go into it strong. And I differ with you when you said the only unconditional love is parental love. I think all of love needs to be unconditional.
Needs to be, but is it?
That's the essence of love. I mean,
Yeah,
love with condition. I mean, I will look, Lanud, I love you only if you do this and this and this for me. That's not love. That's a bargaining chip, right? Because if you don't fulfill all of these, then I'm going to withdraw my love from you.
But that's why I feel like it's only between a mother and her kids or a family, because you love them no matter what, and you love them not because they're your children, but it's a weird kind of love. I feel that way with my nieces and nephew. That's why I'm like, oh my God, this feels completely different than any love I've ever experienced. Because even other love, even as unconditional as I could be towards my partner or my ex-fiance or whatever, there's always a part of me that's like, do I really like love them? Because when you love them, you're like, I'm loving them enough for them to love me back. And it's never just loving them for the sake of loving them, like there's always something. And it's hard not to feel that way. It's very, you know, and then, but you want them to be happy, and you genuinely, when you do things for people, like I do things for my friends and everything, I genuinely don't want anything in return, and I never ask for it. I genuinely want to see them happy. And I don't know if this is a form of, you know, like unconditional love, but I've never once have done something like out of this world for someone and expected anything back except a thank you, which I never get sometimes, and it bugs me. But then I'm like, you know what, it's fine, I don't need a thank you. You know, their happiness and their you know, their comfort makes me happy. So yeah.
So يعني conditional love cannot be يعني with small conditions or big conditions and so on. Okay, unconditional love is really no conditions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We balance it, because the paradox is where in any relation there's a little bit of expectations. In your intimate relations, there's a lot of expectations. So go in with high expectations from the other, okay, and you layer it with conditions, okay. So already you're building barriers and you're building the high expectations, plus you have your own needs that you never tell the other person about them, because if he loves me enough, he should know better without me telling him what he should be doing. So you know, you know, the layers are, we're setting ourselves up not to be loved, not to feel it, and our partner up to fail. So we make it harder for ourselves and for the partner.
That happens, yeah.
So look, the way we show up in this world, the way we are in this world, this is the way we show up in our relationships. So whether you will find some people are always angry or blaming or so on, be sure that this is what they're going to attract in their relationships. لأنه like attracts like, right? So, and we attract these relationships, and then we decide, relationships, we can work on every area in our life, but our relationship, it should come. We should, the fact that we need to really work on relationships doesn't exist for a lot of people. So, okay, so we have high expectations. We don't communicate what we need out of the other person. Each one of us feels love in a different way and experiences love in a different way. And it should flow without us working on it. All of these we're shooting ourselves in the foot. How are we going to get to a relationship we want if we actually have all of these barriers? Very seldom do we come together and say, you know, I would like to understand what makes you feel loved. Okay? How do you feel loved? One of my friends, she loves when her husband brings her gifts. Okay? Her presents for her are a way that he goes out and he actually thinks about what she wants. And for her is a way she feels loved. Okay? And by her nurturing, okay, she feels that she should cook for him a home cooked meal, and this is the only way he feels loved, right? So she's cooking and cooking and cooking for him, and they've been going more and more distant. She feels loved because she keeps getting the presents and the gifts, but they're not connected as much, okay? So I asked her, I said, have you ever asked him if, food is the way to communicate love to him? And she said, no, but everybody knows, okay, المعدة or whatever, food is the way to a man's heart, right?
Yeah.
So when she went and asked him, and she said, after 17 years of marriage, this question came.
Wow.
Okay, how, what's most important for you? Because, I keep cooking this food and so on, and you like it. I don't feel that you appreciate it. All I want is you to spend time with me, right? and you never spend time with me. If you spend time with me, I know that you're not with the kids, you're not in the cooking, you're not doing something, you're not with friends. If you want me to feel loved, I want you to spend time with me. It's that simple. And
Which goes back to communication.
yes, exactly.
Communicate.
It took a simple question after 17 years of marriage
That's crazy.
transform their relationships. Okay?
Wow.
Because we project what we want. We think it's, if we like gifts, we think it's gifting. If we like, so the first.
But why is that? Like, why do people stay quiet for so long? Why can't people just, is it fear of the answer, or some people they don't like asking the questions, they don't communicate, they just go with the flow thinking that it's working when it's not. And I don't know why people don't just communicate.
We're not trained. We are quick to judge. We're not trained to say, you know what, we assume people are like ourselves, right? We don't stop and say, how do you feel? What would you like me to get you as a gift? We usually get gifts for people that we like.
Yeah.
So, and this is why the very first master skill for a very good relationship is deep understanding of your partner. And I mean deep understanding when you stop thinking and judging and you actually go from the heart and you put yourself in that person's shoes. So
yeah,
when you do that, this is where you withhold your judgment, because your judgment, it comes with all of your baggage of your upbringing, of your ideas, and so on. And that gives you and your partner a chance to get to know each other. So understanding of each other and putting yourself in your partner's shoes, that's the very first step to ensuring that, you're giving your
yeah.
a chance.
Yeah. What about, I've also gotten a lot of questions, which I want to address actually, because it came out so many times. People tend to be stuck in toxic relationships. It's like a vicious cycle and they can't let go. It's like we discussed before, it's like a drug. They have a hold on you. Something is there that keeps like pulling you back, even though it's wrong. And that leads to a lot of, women getting abused, all these different scenarios. You don't necessarily have to be physically abused, but you can be mentally and emotionally abused, which honestly is horrifying. And I find it a lot worse. They're all equally bad, but how do you get them to get out? Or how can they get themselves out? And really out, like not go back again and again and again and again, because it's like it's years wasted, like why do you go back to something that isn't working for you? And then like how many chances can you give?
It's not about, that's a great question. It's not about chances. It's like we said, people are at different places in their relationships, and these people might be planning their exit strategy, right? And you find a lot of people who are stuck. They're saying, you know what, when the kids grow up or when the kids go out of the house, university,
yeah,
or you know what, when I become financially independent, when, okay? But listen to what they're saying.
they're all excuses.
They're all excuses, and they're all hedging on somebody else outside themselves. Because again, the starting point is us. Starting point is how are we managing ourselves? Because to manage any relationship in life, intimate or any relationship in life, hatta business, friends, everybody, the starting point and the end point really is you. How can you, if you look for your power and your happiness outside yourself, whether from your husband, from your mother-in-law, which I doubt, but from your friends, from your if your happiness or your self-esteem, anything that you need to feel, your security resides outside you, you become helpless, you become powerless. The ability to move out becomes more, you become more a victim and you become weaker. So the only way is to gain that power back. Yani, you have given, and nobody can take something from you. Yani, nobody can put you down if it's without your consent. Nobody can take away your power without your consent, right? So the very first step is to take back your power, work on yourself to get back stronger on yourself, on your own 2 feet, to get unstuck. Because believe it or not, even with women who are in abusive relationships, right? They get something out of that abuse as well. It's shocking, it's sad, but they get back because they're too afraid to break free. They're too afraid of the unknown. They're too afraid to confront what could be a better life. You know?
You're muted, by the way.
Hello?
Yeah, now we can hear.
Okay, perfect. So I was saying that this takes us back to self-love and how incredibly important it is. And I always talk about self-love to the point where a lot of people are like, why do you keep, like talking about self-love so much? I'm like, because it's literally the answer to all your problems.
Absolutely.
All of your problems. If you find, it's like the fountain of God knows what, like if you can find the true meaning and essence of self-love and really give it to yourself and just work on yourself in every aspect, and if you really connect with yourself and understand where your problems lie, you can solve so many issues in your life, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your partner, whether it's at work, everywhere. But people don't know how to get to that point. Like, what do you mean? Like, they keep asking me, they're like, what do you mean? Like, what is self-love? I was like, and I honestly, when they asked me what is self-love, I had no idea how to answer that. I know what it is, but I had no idea how to answer that.
No, absolutely. Can you still hear me?
What's going on?
No idea.
Now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, good.
There's a bird in the Zoom.
I think so.
Sounds like a bird. Some kind of exotic bird going crazy.
That's really good.
Salma, you have both your lines open right now, by the way.
That's why it's an echo.
So how can I do that?
Mute one of them, I'll tell you. The one where you're on video is okay. I think when you mute the other one, that's when you see the problem.
Okay, how about this?
No, do the opposite.
The other one?
The opposite.
Okay.
Okay.
This is better?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
All right. So, no, I totally agree with you. I think self-love is very important, and people think it's like something that is selfish and so on. Look, if our relationship, the very first love, if we don't love ourselves, nobody's gonna love us, right? If we don't think that we are worthy of love, if we are not okay with ourselves, then there's, we're always gonna be lacking. So whatever is happening inside us, right? On a mental level, on a psychological level, on a spiritual level. Okay, this is how, you know, what happens around us as well. So we project our ideas of lack into our life. So if we lack confidence, we're always gonna manifest that into our life, and we're always gonna go out to people and choose partners to latch onto, who will give us that instant drug, as you called it, to make us feel a little bit better about ourselves. So the cornerstone for everything in our life is us. And this is what we talked about last time in our chat. How do we make sure that we are whole and complete? How do we make sure that this journey that we're on makes us happier, better people? How do we aspire to become better versions of ourselves? And this is something that doesn't happen day one. It's a journey, and we keep evolving and we keep learning. But self-acceptance is so important. And before acceptance, knowing ourselves and knowing what we want and what we're okay with is so important. Because at least if we know that, you know, I lack self-esteem and I need to work on my confidence, then I can work. If I'm not aware of it, that's a disaster, because there's nothing to work on, right? But it's easier to put the blame on everything and everybody. So we have grown men and women who say, you know, but, you know, why are you like that? He would tell you, but it's my upbringing. It's my dad was always like that. It's like, okay, your dad's like that, but you're 47. What are you talking about? Okay, so grow up. Don't use that as a hanger, as your excuse. This is ridiculous, because you have a choice to leave that and to pick up a better habit, to pick up a better emotion, to think differently. There is no excuse for us to stay stuck in old patterns, unless that's what makes us feel we can grab attention or makes us happy. So self-love is accepting ourselves, working on ourselves, making sure that we go into any relationship in life strong and complete. Imagine, it's not only with our intimate relations, but a lot of women who are insecure and stuck in bad relationships, they project on their children. They
That's
go
true.
to their children for attention and for to get that. So it becomes a vicious cycle. So
It's a vicious cycle and a pattern that like a domino effect. So it's just it never ends. At some point you just want to break the curse, you know, like it becomes like a curse almost.
Exactly. So it's not about it's not about loving yourself only if this. It's about starting to love yourself and accept yourself, and making sure that you are strong enough to be ready for a relationship, to be ready for a friendship, to be ready for interacting with people, even the way that we love our parents. Okay, we have so much more to give when we love ourselves, when we accept ourselves, even to our parents, even to your nephews and daughters. So the very first step is self-love, self-acceptance, and working on ourselves. A lot of us don't know what we need. We don't know what makes us feel loved or not. We don't even think about it. What are our real desires, and what do we want out of relationships? What do we want out of ourselves? If we don't have clarity on that, and we go blind, into a relationship, our chances are not very high to make it successful and to make it passionate and to make it long-lasting and sustainable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
So, like we said, true understanding of your partner, but true understanding of ourselves is.
So in terms of I just want to talk about this a little bit more, because if you can sum up self-love, how would you sum it up? Self-love is just basically
self-awareness, knowing yourself, right? And accepting yourself, okay? And
forgiving yourself,
accepting yourself, appreciating the good things about yourself, appreciating the things not 100% and you're not perfect, and accepting that and loving that the way that you are, and working on yourself to become better. So
it's almost like you're making peace with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, if we're not always, I always tell my friends, think about the way that we always criticize ourselves. We're always very hard on ourselves. Okay?
Yeah.
Call it ambition. I love ambition, but how are you talking to yourself? Are you always criticizing yourself? Are you always,
it's like when you go like, oh my God, I look horrible today. I look so fat today. I gained a kilo. I'm not gonna go out. Oh my God, I'm so this, I'm so that. It's like it's so many ways of putting yourself down that kind of, yeah.
And the way we talk, or words are what words create life around us. And there's a huge difference between you saying, I feel angry today, or I am angry. Completely different. I am angry, you actually identified with that emotion and you became anger. Okay? You feel angry, you're a little bit distant with that self and you can manage that.
Yeah.
When we talk to ourselves and we beat ourselves up, we don't even do 10% of that to a stranger. If we are able to be kind to others, we owe it to ourselves also to be kind to ourselves. So accepting ourselves the way we are and loving where we are is the first step to actually becoming better on our journey.
Okay, that's perfect. I have a question though. Like there's, in terms of, why is the computer? In terms of forgiveness, this word carries huge weight and huge meaning in relationships, whether one you have with yourself or one you have with others. When is forgiveness being abused? When should it be used? When should it be, you know what I mean?
Abused by whom?
Well, it depends. Like, okay, let's say, like, I get a lot of people sending me, messages about them being in relationships where he cheated, she cheated, he cheated, everyone cheats. And okay, fine. And there's a lot of women that come up to me. They're like, you know what? It's fine. Men cheat all the time, but it's not fine when he starts neglecting me. That disturbed me for a bit, because I was just like, so it's fine if he cheats because he's a man, you're fine with that, but it's not fine that he's neglecting you. How does that make sense? And then there are other people who are like, listen, he's cheated once and twice and I've forgiven him, but I don't know, my relationship changed, my perception of him changed, but I'm in this for the kids, and I want to believe that he would change, and he apologized and he said he would never do it again. And so should I forgive him? And should I move on? And that's where I'm stuck at giving an answer, because you cannot possibly understand what they're going through because you're not in that relationship, in their relationship. So you don't know what type of person he is. You don't know if he's going to do it again or if he's not. And then a relationship is about working it out. It's not about giving up so quickly. It's through thick and thin, for sickness and in health, till death do us part, all this kind of stuff. And divorce is not fun. And بالعكس, I think that when in a relationship, when you guys fight and when you guys reach a breaking point and you get out of it alive, you've established a whole new level of relationship. to the point where I know, because of my parents, like they almost killed each other a few times, and to the point where they almost literally got divorced, and now they're literally at their honeymoon period, mashallah, yani, knock on wood. But like, you know, I never thought they'd get there, you know, but it's because my mom stuck it through, and she's like, you're not in a relationship to give up. I was like, yeah, but some people suffer when they don't give up and they don't walk away. So when do you walk away, and when do you work on it, and at what point is forgiveness being abused by both parties?
Oh my God, this is very it's not a straightforward. It's
Yeah,
complicated.
no, it's not, because it depends on the relationship. Like,
It depends on the relationship. It depends on the people. It depends on the situation. Look, I think in any relationship, you know, intimate or not, respect is key. Okay, trust and respect are things that are, if you would like to imagine, they're the floor that people can stand on. If that gets shaken, and if you cannot trust the floor is gonna carry you, you're always gonna be tiptoeing and feeling that, is it gonna break under my feet or not? The way to walk strong on a floor is when the floor, you don't even think about it. Okay?
yeah.
Once that trust and respect is cracked and gets shaken, very tough to go back and to mend it. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but because that's one of the things that hold you in a relationship.
Pillars. They're pillars, yeah.
Second pillar is honesty. And when you're talking about cheating, when you're talking about people like hiding and you know, lying, فعليا, right? When you're cheating and so on, these two pillars are gone. So forgiveness is, it's very important, but forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you.
Yeah.
Okay. You forgive, and a lot of times you don't forget because you need to remember the lesson. But forgiveness is for you to be able to heal and to move on. But whether you can forgive and still take a different action. Okay? Forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to stay in the relationship. You might forgive and decide, ma salama, I'm going. Right? Because forgiveness is not for him or for her. Forgiveness
For you.
Yeah, and that's important. But I really am with the idea that relationships are a lot of work, and it's not something that the very first mistake that is done, خلاص يلا, I'm gonna leave. This is looking for excuses to it. It depends on your bond. It depends on, is this somebody who's a keeper? Is this relationship where you want to be? Where you see, because a lot of relationships, once they get into a relationship, it becomes, a lot of people, it becomes, you know, what do you want to do in life? I want to get married. Time Mumtaz, you got married, and you know,
Yeah.
and then, you know, then what's next? It cannot be the ultimate dream unless you actually grow together as a couple, or grow apart and stay in the same relationship. We all, as human beings, have a need to grow and to contribute outside ourselves. And once you stop growing and become smaller in a relationship, that's when things become very, very tough. And when you mentioned communication, communication is key, because when couples don't communicate or friends don't communicate, for sure you're gonna grow apart. So, and it's very obvious. Sometimes you meet couples and it's very obvious. You don't know anything about them, but you know that each one has different hobbies. Each one is a different space, different interests. So you can see that they've grown up. So it's, you know, till when do you want to work on it, and how long do you stay with it, or do you want to leave it? It's a very, very personal question, and it depends on many things. It depends, are you ready for it? Are you strong enough to do it? And on what is your plan for your life, you know, beyond this relationship, because we define ourselves through our relationships.
True.
We are so much more. You know, we are a culmination of relationships. We're not only that part of it.
True.
So trust and respect, very important, very important. And courage and honesty is another pillar. It's very important. A lot of times we don't have the courage to actually confront somebody. Because
that saves a lot of time.
yeah, because if we confront them, we are afraid that we might lose them. So khalas, you know what?
That's so true. Oh my God, that's so true.
Brush it under the table and then let's not talk about it. يلا خليها تمر.
This not even brush it under the table. I think it's just being in denial almost. Like not in denial, but you're like, you know what? Since time heals everything, time can heal this situation. I don't want to touch it. You know what I mean? Let time figure it out. But I don't want to touch it.
مشي الحال. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. So I think we've covered everything. I don't know if anyone has questions or
Open it up.
concerns. I feel like we've been talking for almost an hour. Or is it an hour? Yeah, an hour. I don't even know who's on here, but does anyone have any questions or concerns or?
So I have a question. First of all, thank you so much. I mean, brilliant as always. So I have a friend, I really do. I have a friend and, you know, I've known her for about 13 years. She's absolutely brilliant. I mean, you know, incredibly successful, gorgeous, absolutely, you know, a sweetheart with such a commitment, you know, to doing what's right. But ever since, you know, I met her when we were very young, still in university, up to this point, so 14 years down the line, she finds herself in the exact same relationships. So she is always, you know, putting her heart and soul into relationships with, you know, unavailable men, emotionally or just, you know, just unavailable in more than one way, who don't give, you know, even 1% of what she puts into it. And, you know, I'm always amazed at how such a strong, smart, you know, fierce woman will find herself in the exact same situation. I mean, you can change the names, but it's the same relationship, the same
pattern, basically.
The same pattern, the same outcome every single time. Now, wow. You know, the same friend, you know, when she's giving out advice, because, you know, she's so brilliant at what she does, I always tell her, if someone came to you with your same issue, you would tell her to walk away. You would tell her that she deserves better. So yes. in these kinds of situations, I mean, how can we explain what's going on, and how can we support, you know, the people in our lives who are going through something like that?
Well, first of all, can I just say you're such a good friend?
Thank you. I'd like to think so. You know, I tried the tough love. I tried the, you know, listening to the hours of crying, you know, at midnight. I once, you know, ran across
I could tell you're so invested.
I've yelled at her.
I don't know, Salma, yani I've been there personally, but I mean, like I said, I had to, like, literally nobody could even tell me. Nobody could talk me out of it. My mom tried to, she saw a pattern. I would always be with very aggressive men, cheaters. Yeah, very aggressive. And my mom could see that. Very controlling as well, which is why my personality would, like, erase. But it started like a pattern, and no matter how much my mom would talk to me, I would not even blink. I would repeat the same mistake again and again. And I'd listen to her. I know what she's saying, and I agree. But it's like I'm in this Bermuda Triangle, you know, like I'm lost in it. and I really don't know how to get out of it. And then it took me a bunch of like heartaches, slaps, severe traumas that happened to me for me to be like, oh my God, that's it. I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. And I don't want to do this. And what for? I realized that I've wasted almost 15 years of my life repeating the same mistake. I could have been married ages ago to the love of my life. You know what I mean? But no, I had to go and, you know, get into relationships that were so toxic, and I knew they were, but I couldn't get out of it. So that's my personal story. But I don't know, Salma, like, do you have an answer to this? Like,
well, I think I agree, Shireen, it looks like an amazing friend to her. But I think what the best thing that friends can do in situations like that is hold up a mirror. So you need to be her mirror. She needs to smart, she can identify it, but she's on an autopilot here, right?
Yeah.
She didn't see it. So the best thing to do as friends is hold up a mirror and as much as possible show her what she's doing, because change happens in a second. Once she sees it, once she realizes what she's doing,
switch.
Yeah. So holding up
How do you show her?
Yeah, but you know, she has to see it before she can deal with it, because what she's attracting these men because of things that are happening internally with her, right? So you know, it's coming from a lack of somewhere, either lack of self-esteem, lack of something. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's coming from a place of weakness, not a place of strength. So, you know, keep holding a mirror, keep showing her what she's doing until it clicks, because once she sees it, she's gonna transform. That's the best thing you can do for friends.
If I can add to that, yeah, again, just to comment on everybody else's, you know, Shireen, you're a great friend to her. Obviously, we all need that kind of friend who's there to support us. Yeah. If I can add that, I think sometimes, you know, we talk about self-love and, you know, looking at ourselves. All these things are, of course, extremely important. But I think what happens to most of us is we need to have the tools. Like, you know, when you run a race, you know that the end finish is when you've won. You've done 100 meters, 200 meters. So you have a bit of a scale to work with. But what is the scale of when it comes to self-love? Or, you know, I think to me, what I look at it as, you know, we talk about when you're comfortable within yourself, you're with someone. So let me just go back to something, sorry. For example, Shireen, you talk about your friend, she's extremely successful, she's beautiful, she's an awesome girl. And we see this all the time, right? And to me, I feel sometimes what ends up happening, in fact, I think it's most of the time, and I've looked into this for myself as well, is that I find I have specifications of what I was looking for. And I might say I don't, but actually I kind of do. I say I don't. There's a list, there's some kind of a list.
Yeah, there's always a list.
Right, like a parent's list, the community list, my friends, or even people who've always known me to be a certain way, and they thought, oh, we expect her to be with this kind of person, but then she ends up with a totally different person. You're like, oh, how do I do this? So that's why I feel it's when you become comfortable with yourself, knowing that I don't care how successful I am, or if I'm someone who's not as successful as me, that's okay. Again, Salma, you mentioned not to have expectations of someone else. It's about what is important to me, you know, what I want to achieve in terms of work, whether it's a personal, financial, whatever it is, friendship-wise. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. Do I need to force him out to be with friends? No. I think as long as I know what is important to me and what I like, and I get to do the things I like and I enjoy them, and be able to also introduce him into my life, but within what he likes, I think that's important. So I think that when we sometimes get into toxic relationships, I believe it's because we have certain set expectations of that person, even though we know we say we don't, but actually I think we do at the end of the day. But if we start to drop that, I believe we start to really, we talk about self-love, like accepting the person for who they are and knowing that you can be yourself and enjoy that. I mean, that's, and also, by the way, with age, I think things change. with age, things change. Like I was, at some point in my life, I was a certain way, and then a couple of years later, you change.
Evolve. Yeah.
Evolve. Even with marriages, and I know you talked about being, you get slapped a few times. I think it's important to get slapped. Whatever it is, I think sometimes what happens to most of us, and it's human nature, when you put to the threshold, you start to change, you start to realize things, and you do things that are important to you. And of course, you also grow that when we do what's important to us, but then you have to be respectful to the person you introduce into your life and be able to create that balance. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thanks. That's really valuable, Dana. It's so good. I like the additional layer that complicates stuff is whenever we talk about relationships and working on relationships and working on ourselves and self-love and so on, people think this is a chick flick, right? That this is like a woman thing, or but relationships are not a woman thing. If we want a relationship to work, it needs to be both sides. I mean, he needs to be also in it, to work on it, to be attuned, to be aligned, because alignment is very important.
But I like, sorry, Salma, just before I forget, I like what you said, which brought me to, I remembered my parents' relationship when I spoke to them once, and you know how you evolve in a relationship, right? You grow, and sometimes you grow faster than the other person, or you grow differently, and there are moments where you lose each other for a bit, and then you tend to work back to each other. But even like what I noticed in relationships is a lot of people try to change each other, and that's like a death sentence. Like you cannot get married to someone, live years with them, and then decide when you've evolved that you want to change him or her. Like it doesn't, like my mom went through an evolving stage, and then my dad started getting on her nerves with some things, and I'm like, wait a second, Dad never changed, like he's the same person. She's like, that's the problem. I was like, no, that's not the problem. You changed. You can't expect Dad to change. And then she's like, yeah, but he's driving me crazy. I'm like, that's because you changed. So it took a while for her to accept my dad and go back to the reasons. That's when she fell in love with him. It's like, he hasn't changed. My dad's very consistent, which is good sometimes because you know what you're going to expect. But my mom is the one that went through all kinds of changes. Like she's seen the universe and back. But like, good for her. But then she's at a different stage. So it's important not to change each other. It's important to accept each other from the beginning and just find the sort of, I feel like when you find each other in the middle, that's when it works. Like for instance, I'll give you an example with my sister and her husband. When she married him, she had high expectations for like, let's say a husband that was 10 times taller than her, but he was like slightly shorter than her. And that really bothered her. And I'm like, it's just the height. He's perfect. She's like, yeah, but I don't know. I can't wear heels. I'm like, that's what you're worried about? And then she's like, no, but I'll feel awkward. Anyways, she stopped wearing heels completely, and she loves her heels. So he noticed, and he's like, listen, why aren't you wearing your heels? Go wear your heels. And she's like, oh, no, it's okay. I'm good with flats. And he's like, are you saying I'm short? And she's like, no. I never said you're short. I'm just comfortable in flats. He's like, no, I'm not short. I don't know why you see me as short. I've never been short. You married a very tall man. And since then, she started wearing her heels, and she's like, I swear to God, Anoud, I see him as the tallest man I've ever been with. Like he's like a giant. And that's because that's how he sees himself. And it's how you see yourself in a relationship, that you sort of portray that towards the other person in front of you. And then things change. Okay, I'm done.
Absolutely. And I think there's one of the questions on the chat from Aisha talks exactly to that. She's saying, what if one person in a relationship is always working on improving in all aspects that you mentioned all the time, but the other refuses to change, saying, I don't want to change, and she cannot because of family pressure. He refuses any advice, and what do we think, how can we help? What could she do? I mean, look, as you were saying, the only person that you can change is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can go into any relationship saying, you know, I love you, but you have to change this, this, this. You know, I only will love you when, and this is the conditional, right? Only if he changes this, things would be perfect. Only if he does this, we're
Yeah, see, that's not fair.
we're always waiting for another person to give us license to feel loved or to love or to feel happier. The only person who needs to change, you have control over, is yourself. So you change, you become better, and you set your expectations. If this is what you have to deal with, that he's not going to change, he doesn't take any advice, it's fine. How will you deal with that? And is this, are you feeling that you're stuck in this life, or are you settling, or is this a life that you can work with? This is something that you have to decide, but don't
Okay.
into it thinking that he should change, or I can, maybe later on somebody can convince him to change. No, you have the responsibility to change yourself and to become better and to deal with this situation. Are you able to deal with it and to live with it and find happiness? Yes, great. No, then you have to make a decision what you want to do. But I wouldn't hold my breath on anybody changing or giving that power out to anybody. Because if you keep waiting for him to change, to feel loved, or to have a happier life and so on, you will always keep waiting. And that's not a good thing to do, because you will be running out of time, and time is very valuable in life. So don't give your happiness, put it in somebody else's hands. Don't your power into somebody else's hand, no matter how much you love them. Okay, and believe me, I've done that mistake many times, you know, because my model of love was unconditional love, and if you love somebody, you give them everything, so much so that you give yourself away.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that.
And this is complete crap, because once you give yourself out, okay, they will stop loving you, because they feel, you know what, what is this human being that is so needy and so, weak,
True.
right?
Yeah.
I fall in love with this person. I fell in love with a person who had a personality, an opinion, who gives and takes, who's strong, and so on. So nothing is, and nobody is worth you giving your power away to, and giving your, making them in charge of your happiness, because nobody's in charge of your power and happiness except yourself. And that's very important to always remind yourself of.
I agree with you, Salma. Also, if I can add, I think there are also some stages to that. Like when we say we want someone to change, I think sometimes it's important to say, have I changed first? Because if you're going to push that on someone, you got to ask yourself, maybe I've changed that all of a sudden I want him to see.
Exactly.
Right? That's the first thing. And I think then the second thing, if you feel you have been this way all along, well, then maybe you haven't communicated it right to him, or maybe, you have already knew that from the beginning, but you went in thinking that things are going to change, which we said that shouldn't be the case. So I think the first thing is there's got to be a sense of, there's a selfishness that happens, I think, a lot of the times before we start speaking. We need to, I think, assess that first and understand, is it something that's I've incepted? And if it's something that I have incepted, then how do I communicate that gently to the other person? And if I want that other person to be able to receive what I'm saying or be receptive of it, then maybe they just don't have the tools to be able to understand that. Maybe I need to drop it, like little drops along the way. Maybe I shouldn't enforce the change right away. Maybe I should make the person figure out that they came up with the idea themselves. By the way, a brilliant friend of mine who's been happily married for a very long time, always told me, never never make him feel, if we're talking about male, female, never make him feel that you told him what to do and it was your idea. Make him.
Oh yeah, that's a classic one.
Keeping up with it, right? But all this to say is that it's true. I mean, both sides, men and women. You know, if I can refer to, I don't know if anybody knows, her YouTube has been going viral. Dr. Esther Perel, she did this whole controversial thing on infidelity.
Yeah.
And she basically takes infidelity from the other side, saying that people who cheat, the first thing you do is say, you cheated on me, da 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 da. Yes, it's wrong, the trust, whatever, but she takes it from another perspective, which is actually quite interesting. And I say this, by the way, with someone who has experienced being cheated on in the past. So I'm not someone who's just, you know, talking. And what was interesting about that is she talks about it from the perspective of, take the moment to understand why that person did that. Like there's something genuinely wrong. It's not something wrong with me. Like right away we think it's something wrong with yourself. So I'm a big believer in, we talk about self-love and all these, like, you know, I like to say cliches, but what does it actually mean? So I think it comes down to breaking it down as such and being able to bridge over to the other person. It's always about us, the way we get angry, the way we get there. So I mean, these are the things that come to mind. And if I can say, I'll just add two other things. I've had two separate conversations with two male friends. And it's so interesting, you know, when you have a lot of, you know, male friends and they give you perspectives on things and their relationships. One friend told me once, I just want someone who can do all those other things that I need, you know, complete me. And I said, well, what does that exactly mean? You're actually actively looking for someone who's going to do A, B, and C. And if you don't get that, that's how you're going to be happy. He actually said, that's how I'll be happy. I said, do you know how much weight you're putting on someone? I mean, forget
Wow.
it, right? It's a lot of weight. So I am going to go into a relationship with you knowing that I have to give you A, B, and C. And if I stop giving you A, B, and C, you're going to go into a depression or whatever, or you're just going to leave me. You can't put that on someone. You need to have that. You need to bring that on yourself first before, and then that person should just walk in making you happy within yourself and your own world without you having to change that. On the other hand, the other conversation I had with someone where he said to me, we were talking about when the switch happens, you know, he's running after you or you're running after him. And then all of a sudden the switch happens. What happened? He was so into me or she was so into me. And he said to me, he said, well, I really liked her the way she was with everything she did. And all of a sudden she wanted to do everything the way I was doing it. She wanted to do my activities. She wanted to be in my world, and all the stuff that she was doing, she no longer does. But that's what I did with that. Meanwhile, she thought, well, but I thought me bridging over to you, that's what you wanted. You wanted me to drop my calendar, drop my social event, be there with you, do all, I thought that's what you wanted. But he's like, that's not how I wanted it. So it's interesting, the dynamic. And again, we talk about communication or lack of, but what does that actually mean? Gotta break it out.
You know, that's so true. But you brought an interesting, you know, many interesting points, but one that I want to comment on is giving the other person what they really need, right? As long as you are not filling a gap in their personality, it's important. I mean, at least there's transparency of saying that, you know, I need to feel 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not for that, you know, abdicating the responsibility and saying, here, you are in charge of making me feel confident and successful and you know what I mean? That's not what I mean. But I think the fact that this conversation happens and there's an awareness of that is very important. It's very rare. Couples go into a relationship saying, look, my biggest fear is that I'm gonna lose you, the way that my mother, you know, people don't talk about their biggest fears or their biggest desires. And a lot of times when you're talking about affairs or cheating and so on, and you drill down to it, it's because they have found somebody outside the relationship where they can be candid about all of these feelings and all of this conversation. A lot of times it drills down to real conversation, but not superficial conversation. And that's what, when it becomes more complicated when there are kids involved, when there's social pressure, when they're busy with so many real communication at a deep level is critical to holding um, any relationship through the turbulent times, because no relationship, whether it is marriage or intimate or friendship or professional, is going to be like going very smoothly all the time. It will go through ups and downs, and it gets built. The more experience, the more laps, as you said, the more turbulence it goes through, the more strength it will be, depending on how people handle it, right? But what gets people through this wavy, if you want, stream, is communication. Are you really connected on an honest level, and are you able to take his honesty to her honesty? Because a lot of times we are not ready for an honest answer. And that's very important as well, because we talk about, we want real honesty, we want communication and so on. Are we prepared for honesty, complete transparency? And are we prepared to deal with it and with its consequences? That's one thing. Anybody else, please? So on the feed, somebody's saying, can you talk about having a relationship with a narcissist? All right. Okay, what do you think about that?
Narcissists. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's not easy, but as long as you have identified that he or she is a narcissist, then it's easy to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's like any trait in any personality. It's very tough because it's all about massaging their ego and making sure that they're the only ones who are present or seem to be dominant in the relationship and so on. These people come from, again, a void. Narcissism it comes from a lack, not a strength. So knowing that, you have to really decide how you handle it, because it's easy to handle it. People think that it's very difficult to live with a narcissist, which it is. But if you know how to handle it, it's easily managed like anything and everything else.
Some people feel like you're in a competition when you're in a relationship with a narcissist.
You're in a competition? Yeah, I guess, because you're always trying to find your space, to find a place he's always or she's always taken over. It's true. I think the challenge is to ensure that your personality and your presence doesn't get in. You don't shrink, because with narcissists, we tend to shrink ourselves. They become more, right?
Yeah.
So we take more space in the relationship. So we tend to shrink ourselves, and the more we shrink, the less we become ourselves to give space for them. And that's the danger with a narcissist. So it's keeping your grounds, making sure that you're there and dealing with it. It's very important, because once you start shrinking, that's when he will keep pushing until you disappear. So I think the challenge is holding your space and making sure that you hold your ground with a narcissist.
Exactly.
I think, Salma, if I can add to that as well, the tool of mirroring, you talked about holding a mirror to, for someone to see themselves. We talk about that and metaphorically as well, but I think that the actual act of mirroring a person, even when it comes in the workplace, I mean, how often do we end up dealing with a narcissist at work? This is even harder because you have to create that, diplomacy and whatnot. I find, and to your point, when you actually diminish yourself and have to submit to that, you just shrink and shrink and shrink, and they're always going to overpower. I really believe in the power of mirroring the little things, whether it's mirroring the physical aspect in the way the person moves their arm, their hands when you're sitting in front of them, their tone of voice, the way they speak, the words are chosen. I found through experience, and sometimes it's not fun because that's not who you are as a person, but I find in certain situations when you really need to use that tool, I find mirroring really kind of, it's the one thing that allows the other person to grasp that, hey, this is talk. And you're just, you just normalize it to them. And then they realize, well, I don't like to be talked to that way. So there's a difference I find when you mirror versus when you tell the person, the way you're talking to me is not right. You need to change that.
Yeah.
Personally, and
but some people don't even realize it. That's what scares me, is that some people don't know they're talking to you like that, or they're acting like this, and even if you confront them, or let's say you'll mirror them, they'll be in complete like shock, like, why are you talking to me like that? And I was like, I'm just talking to you the way you're talking to me. And they're like, we don't talk like that. And I was like, really? Like, I need to hold a video and just videotape you. Like, how do you not see? And I swear to God, they don't know what they're doing.
That's true. That's very true. And I think most people think if I diminish myself, if I become less and make him more, he will love me more, or he will accept me more, and so on.
Yeah.
Exactly the contrary. Once you start going on a slippery slope of like diminishing yourself, it's gonna be even worse, because this is not the way that narcissists would respect you. Narcissists would respect somebody who takes over space as much as he does.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Did we miss anything on the feed? So I totally agree. That's a challenging environment.
It is.
I think it's very important, and this is the subject of our chat today, is how do you map out the relationships that matter in your life? And part of these relationships that matter is work, because when relationships at work are going sour, it really affects your life, right? It just like affects your mood. It poisons the whole thing. Let's go back to basics. Who are the most important people in the team? Okay, that are in charge of your future in this, right? So your manager or your boss, for sure, right? Because he's the one, who are the stakeholders here? He's the one who can determine your promotion or your bonus or your increase, whatever, right? Who else?
Let's say when you come to me with an assertive attitude and you have so much faith in your work and what you're doing, and you totally get it. No one can do your work but you. You're in that field for a reason, and you're the best at that job. So when you come with so much doubt, I can see it before I even hear it. So automatically I kill the idea before I even hear it, because I'm like, okay, she's not sure. Like, I don't even want to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, she's automatically like, how are you supposed to sell me an idea you're not sure of? And even though you're sure of, I think what you're worried about, which is what I've been put in several times, is that you're worried about what they're gonna say.
We're all different, and we like, we speak to everybody in the same kind of tone, the kind of way, and kind of approach, because we think everybody needs to understand it and would understand it. But really, if you speak Chinese to me, I would have no idea what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Or German or whatever. And this is exactly the way that, our approach and the vocabulary we use, the words that we use, and so on. This is how much customization you have to actually understand the person in front of you and customize it. Think about it as if it's a completely different language. And your aim is to get your message across. I know it's a lot of work, but then the more you do it, the more it becomes very natural to you. I mean, we're all different
people skills.
So how can we brush everybody with this? We paint everybody with the same brush. So we have one from Mia as well, saying how to be if you always fall in love with a man who's not going to marry you, or who doesn't love you, or calls you your relationship as a friendship. At the same time, there are strong feelings. So the man doesn't want to marry you and he doesn't love you, and he calls your relationship a friendship. And what are you doing? I don't understand. What is the question? Why are you still having feelings for this guy?
I think it's a pattern. When I think what she's trying to say is that that's what I understood. And what do you do when you keep falling for guys that just want to be friends with you, and they don't want anything more? But if they don't want anything more, it's kind of hard to fall in love with them, no?
I mean, are you around, Mia?
Is Mia here? No, she doesn't have the. No.
Right.
Oh yeah, she is, but she's muted.
Okay. So, so Mia, this is a pattern that you're always going out to a relationship where you're getting reinforced that you are not lovable, right? That you are not deserving of commitment. So you have to really, if this is a pattern that's recurring in your life, the answer is within you, not within the men that you are attracting, because you're attracting from a lack. Why are you attracting men who are gonna give you this reinforcement that you're unlovable, and you only can reach as high status as a friend for them, but you're not lovable and you're definitely not marriage material. So this is something that it's a pattern. You keep attracting it because deep down inside, you might be feeling that you are not worthy of love or marriage. So be very careful. I would look inside the answers if this is a pattern.
Selma, can I ask a question? I think because it ties in Mia's question and Erica. I feel like we sort of set the patterns of our relationships very early on. So we sort of get into this mold, right? And we signal to the other person what is and isn't okay. And, so in a way, people, treat you the way you allow them to treat you. And once we get into that pattern, and the reason we get into it goes back to, how we feel about ourselves, what it is that we're looking for. We're worried about what we're projecting, like Anud said, and how people are seeing those projections. And we react before we even, we react out of fear, right? So what's going to happen if I speak up at work? What's going to happen if I speak up and tell this guy, I deserve more than just a friendship? I'm not looking for a friend. So what do you think about, how we establish the patterns of our relationships early on? And how do we change them? How do we become aware of them? And then how do we change them?
Great question. Do you want to take a stab on it? Shall I start, Anud, or you want to start?
Go right ahead.
I think you mentioned part of the answer already in your question. A lot of our actions early on are fear-based, right? So we're scared of speaking up, let's say at work, because we don't want to upset people around us, or we're afraid of the consequences. If I speak up, they don't like it, I'm gonna get fired, I'm gonna lose my job. If I say what I think, there's a punishment there. So fear is running our life, and fear is running our thoughts and our actions. So the only way to start making decisions and taking actions out of strength is to rid ourselves of fear, because once we are allowing fear to dictate our life and our actions, I promise you, our boundaries are gonna stay very limited. our life and our potential is not going to be realized. We're living in fear of what the consequences might be. So fear makes us shrink, not something that will make us grow. And it's something that is very tough to break out of. But believe me, once we're able to conquer our fear and say, regardless of the consequences, I don't want to be living a life where I don't have a voice. I'm not realizing my dreams. I'm not able to be fully present in my relationship, at work, and so on, regardless of the consequences. And you know what? I'm strong enough. Whatever comes, I will handle it. Okay? Because there's a lot of freedom to break that fear. And fear comes at different stages. And this is why we find a lot of people stuck in a miserable relationship because they're too scared to be, they're too scared to break out because, okay, what if I don't find somebody better? What if I leave this relationship? And what if I'm not lovable? What if it's me? What, you know, it becomes like a downward spiral. So the only way out of it is to work on our fear paradigm, actually to control it rather than it controls and takes over our lives. Because fear limits us, and we are born to flourish, to actually become more, and to make our presence and our influence on the world. So, if there's anything, there's one thing you need to do in life and only one thing, break away from your fear. Set yourself free because it's a prison that we self-impose on ourselves without knowing. You know, we keep in a small prison, called fear, because I don't want to be judged by somebody. I don't want to be, you know, to lose my job. I don't want to upset my boss. I don't want to upset my husband, and so on. You become somebody who has no color, no personality, no nothing, tastes. And, you know, our mission on life is to live life fully and to be like a rainbow, full of color, full of energy, full of passion, full of joy, full of love. Fear takes all of that away.
True.
I don't know if that answers a little bit of your question, but that's what I would do. That's where I would start. Is there any tools you can practice to reach self-love? That's a good one. Definitely. I think what I find really helpful is, and believe me, this is somebody who's very, very critical of myself, because at one point in my life, I defined ambition. I always prided myself on being ambitious, and I am ambitious, but I thought ambition and self-realism are go hand in hand. So I have to be like very, very, tough with myself, and that makes me have to be ambitious. I mean, I used to go literally when I was in high school. I used to study very well and so on. When I didn't take exams very well. Every time I would go and sit for a final exam or a midterm or whatever, I literally would come home and I would be crying, sobbing, okay? And I would go to my mother and she would say, what's going on? I didn't know what to answer. I'm gonna flunk, I'm gonna get an F. And I was completely convinced that I'm gonna flunk it. And, you know, a few days later, I would get the grade and it would be an A, right? And this was a pattern that kept with me. And I would be very, very critical of myself. So I had to learn the hard way of how to actually turn down that voice that completely always criticizes me and start realizing that there are good things about myself. So I started looking back and saying, okay, I came a long way. Let me start appreciating that, there are things that are good about me. So I started journaling. And I find journaling very useful. Start looking at things that you are thankful for, that you are grateful for in your life. And some of these things that you're grateful for as a person, that you are kind, that you're considerate, that whatever you are, start appreciating that and feeling it every single day. And to the point where you can look at the mirror, and that takes steps, and look at the person in the mirror and say, I really appreciate you. I respect your journey. I respect how far you've come. And I know that you're going to go a long way. Talk to yourself, find out, so journal, look at yourself and remind yourself of the good things, and catch yourself criticizing yourself. Once you catch yourself doing this automatic talk, interrupt it, okay? But journaling is helpful. Doing interrupting is helpful. And doing it consistently until you really start not only valuing yourself, but getting to learn to love yourself. Very important, because look, if we don't value each other, ourselves, and we don't think that we are worthy of love, you know what? Nobody else would. If we don't think that we are worthy, everybody's gonna smell it, and everybody's gonna treat us. Why would anybody treat us the way we treat ourselves? Why do we expect somebody to love us better than the way we love ourselves? So if we want our awesome love, let's have awesome love ourselves. Let's love ourselves and value ourselves awesomely, so we can find that extra. Same with work, value your contribution and value what you bring to people at work, and really believe in yourself, and they will start picking up on that as well.
100%.
Great. Any closing thoughts? Wow, it's like we've been going at this for 2 hours.
2 hours. I was just realized it. I'm like, oh my God.
Awesome.